Don't sleep, sir. My mom is coming. The man's lips moved slowly, like every word had to climb uphill before it could leave his mouth. Meeting, he murmured weakly. Can't. Be late. Annie Hayes leaned closer, her small face tight with worry. You're not going anywhere right now, she said quickly. Just stay awake, okay? My mom's coming. She's a nurse. The man's pale blue eyes drifted toward her for a moment. They looked confused, as if he couldn't quite understand where he was or why a girl was kneeling beside him on a cracked front walk in the middle of a quiet Chicago block. Then his eyes began to close again. Annie's heart jumped. No, don't do that, she said urgently. Stay with me. A few minutes earlier, everything had been normal. She had only come outside to take out the trash before her mother got home from work. That was the rule on nights when Monica Hayes worked late shifts at the hospital. Take out the trash, lock the door, turn on the porch light, wait inside. Annie had done the first two things perfectly. She had dragged the kitchen garbage bag through the hallway, pushed open the old screen door with her shoulder, and stepped outside into the cool evening air. The porch light flickered on above her, buzzing softly. That was when she heard someone running. The sound of fast, uneven footsteps slapped against the sidewalk. He ran past the neighbor's fence, took 2 more steps toward Annie's gate, and then suddenly slowed, collapsed onto the walkway. He tried to grab the iron fence. Now he lay half against the gate, breathing too fast, his face pale under the porch light. Annie swallowed hard. Mister, she whispered. No answer. She crouched down beside him, remembering something her mother always said after long shifts. Don't panic first. Look first. So Annie looked carefully. He wasn't hurt that she could see, but he was breathing strangely short, fast breaths like he had just run a race and couldn't stop. His forehead was damp with sweat. His eyes barely stayed open. Sir, Annie said again, a little louder. Can you hear me? The man's eyelids lifted halfway. Late, he murmured faintly. You're not late, Annie said firmly. You're sick. His head rolled slightly to the side. His breathing sounded wrong. Annie suddenly remembered something else her mother had shown her once while watching a safety video on TV. If someone feels faint or collapses, help them lie flat and lift their legs. It helps the blood go back to their heart. Okay, Annie whispered nervously. I'm gonna help you. She slipped her small hands under his shoulder and tried to guide him gently onto his back. He was heavy, much heavier than she expected, but she managed to straighten him out enough so he wasn't twisted against the gate anymore. Then she looked around. She spotted the trash bag she had dropped. Quickly, she grabbed it, folded it, and slid it carefully under his ankles to raise his legs a little the way her mother had explained once. There, she said softly, breathing hard. Mama says this helps. The man barely reacted. His eyes drifted closed again. No, don't sleep, Annie said quickly. She tapped his shoulder gently. Hey, stay with me, talk to me. His lips moved again. Meeting. You can go to your meeting later, Annie said. Right now you gotta breathe. She reached out and placed her small hand against his sleeve. Listen to me, okay? She said softly. My name's Annie. I live here. That's my house. She pointed toward the small porch behind her. You're gonna be okay. My mom fixes people all the time. But the man's breathing was getting slower now. Annie felt panic rising again. She pulled her mother's old phone from the pocket of her hoodie and quickly tapped the number she knew best. Mom. The phone rang. Once, twice, then Monica Hayes answered. Annie? Mama, Annie blurted. There's a man. Everything in Monica's voice changed instantly. What man? Annie, where are you? I'm outside, Annie said quickly. He fell down by our gate and he won't wake up right. Is he breathing? Yes. Good, Monica said. Annie could hear the sound of traffic in the background. I'm turning around right now. Stay with him. Okay. The call ended. Annie stared at the phone for a moment. Then suddenly she remembered something important. Emergency. Mama always called emergency. Oh, Annie gasped. She quickly dialed 911. A calm voice answered almost immediately. 911. What is your emergency? There's a man and he fell down, Annie said quickly. He won't wake up and he's breathing weird. The operator asked for her address. Annie told her. An ambulance is on the way, the operator said. But then she added something that made Annie's stomach twist. There is heavy traffic in that area right now. It may take several minutes. Several minutes. Annie looked down at the man again. His breathing sounded weaker now. She squeezed his arm. "Sir," she said gently, trying to sound brave even though her heart was racing. "You gotta stay awake." His eyes opened just a little. "Where?" "My house," Annie said. "You fell by my gate." He looked at her again, confused. Annie leaned closer. "Just keep breathing," she said softly. "My mom's coming." For a moment he stared at her like he couldn't believe she was real. Then his eyes began to close again. Annie quickly tapped his shoulder. "Hey, no sleeping," she insisted. "Mama says that's not allowed." The man's watch caught the porch light and flashed silver. His phone lay on the sidewalk nearby, lighting up again and again with incoming calls he was too weak to answer. The whole street felt strangely quiet around them. Annie kept talking. "You're gonna be okay," she repeated. "Just breathe." Then, finally, headlights turned onto the block. An old sedan rolled quickly toward the curb. Annie looked up and her heart leapt. "That's my mom," she whispered. And for the first time since the stranger had collapsed in front of her house, Annie felt a little less afraid. Monica Hayes was out of the car before the engine stopped ticking. The driver's door slammed behind her, and she crossed the sidewalk at a near run, one hand already reaching into the deep pocket of her black coat for the small penlight she carried after every shift. Monica saw Annie kneeling beside a stranger on the walkway. "Annie, baby, move back just enough to give me room," Monica's voice soft. Annie obeyed immediately, scooting to the side on her knees but keeping one hand on the man's sleeve as if letting go might make him disappear. Monica dropped down beside him. In one sweep of her trained eyes, she took in everything. The loosened tie, the soaked collar, the expensive overcoat, the silver watch, the phone lying on the pavement with its screen still lighting up, the way his legs had been raised on the folded trash bag. Her gaze flicked to Annie. "You did that?" Annie nodded, breathing hard. "Like you said one time, on TV." For the first time since she stepped out of the car, Monica's face softened. "Good girl." Then she went back to work. She pressed 2 fingers to the man's neck and counted silently. She leaned close to his mouth and nose, checked airflow, then slid her hand beneath the back of his suit jacket to feel for heat and dampness between the shoulder blades. Sweat, too much of it. His skin was clammy. His breathing was shallow, but steadier than Annie must have first found it. "Sir," Monica said firmly, giving his shoulder a controlled shake. "Can you hear me?" His eyelids twitched. "Sir, open your eyes." It took effort, but he did. Blue eyes, dazed and glassy, opened halfway. They found Monica's face and held there for a second, as if he were trying to figure out whether she was real. "I need your name," Monica said. He swallowed. "Ethan. Last name." He hesitated, like even that cost him something. "Cole." Monica's hand stopped for the briefest fraction of a second. Of course, even if she hadn't recognized him from the magazines in the waiting room at work, from the local business segments on muted televisions, or from the giant smiling billboard that had gone up downtown last spring, the name would have done it. Ethan Cole, 40 years old, tech investor, real estate visionary, corporate darling, the kind of man city officials praised whenever they talked about growth, innovation, opportunity. The kind of man who could buy a block, rename it Progress, and never meet the people who had once called it home. Monica's mouth tightened. Annie looked between them. "You know him?" "Unfortunately," Monica said quietly. Ethan's eyes shifted, trying to focus. "Phone," he whispered. "Meeting." Monica ignored that. "Do you have chest pain?" A slow blink. "Pressure. Any history of heart problems?" He breathed in too sharply, then winced. "No." "Have you eaten today?" He didn't answer right away. That told her plenty. Monica glanced at Annie. "Did you call 911? "Yes, ma'am. They said traffic is bad." Of course it was. Somewhere downtown, an ambulance would be trying to crawl through buses, delivery vans, construction closures, and the everyday indifference of a city that always seemed to make poor neighborhoods wait a little longer than everybody else. Monica pulled her own phone from her pocket and called emergency dispatch again, identifying herself as a nurse, repeating the address, sharpening her tone just enough to make clear that this was not a fainting spell on a front lawn. This was a possible cardiac event or severe collapse from overexertion. The dispatcher promised a crew was coming. Monica had heard that promise before. She ended the call and looked down at Ethan again. He was fighting to stay conscious now, but barely. His lips had gone dry. His breathing came with the exhausted rhythm of a man whose body had finally rebelled against every order it had been given. "Mr. Cole," she said, and his eyes flickered toward her voice. "I want you to listen carefully. Help is coming, but I need you to stay with me. No more talking about meetings. Just breathe." He made a weak sound that might have been protest. Annie leaned in from the side. "I told him that too." Monica almost smiled despite herself. "I'm sure you did." Monica took Ethan's wrist and checked his pulse again. Still fast. Too fast. She loosened his tie fully, then undid the top button of his shirt. That was when she saw the company logo on the leather portfolio lying half open near the curb. Cole Urban Strategies. The irony hit her so hard it almost made her laugh. Annie noticed her expression. "What?" "Nothing for you to worry about," Monica said automatically. But Annie had inherited the kind of attention that made adults regret underestimating children. "That's the same name on the signs," Annie said. "The ones on the empty lot by church." Monica's jaw set. "Yes, the same signs. Bright promises staked into dirt. Future site of a new Chicago. As if the old one had not held people. As if a city were just land waiting for someone richer to imagine it better." Ethan's eyes opened again. Sluggish but clearer than before. He followed their glance to the portfolio, then back to Monica. Some awareness moved across his face. Not full understanding. Not yet. But enough to know that whatever room he had fallen into in life, it was not neutral ground. "You know who I am," he said. Monica met his gaze. "That's not helping your case." A call came through on the phone lying near the curb. Then another. Then another. The broken screen flashed names in quick succession. Ethan looked at the phone like a man looking at a fire he was too weak to put out. "Answer it," he said. "No." He blinked. "You don't understand." Monica's laugh was short and dry. "Men like you love saying that." Annie looked from one to the other, sensing she had wandered into a world far larger and meaner than she could name. She moved closer to her mother, curling one hand into the back of Monica's coat. Monica put an arm around her without looking away from Ethan. Then she heard it. Not the ambulance. A dark sedan turned onto the block too quickly and slowed near the curb. Headlights sweeping over the front walk. Monica's back straightened. She rose halfway, protective instinct sharpening every line in her body. The passenger door opened first. A man in a camel coat and polished dress shoes stepped out, followed by another in a gray suit with no overcoat despite the cold. Not family. Not friends. Their posture gave them away before their faces did. Men used to entering rooms where other people cleaned up the damage. The one in gray looked at Ethan, not Monica. "Mr. Cole." Monica stood fully now, planting herself between the walkway and the stranger on the ground. "Stop right there." The two men paused, surprised to find resistance in front of a small house with peeling paint and a child's chalk drawing still faint on the side steps. The man in the camel coat offered a thin, practiced smile. "Ma'am. Thank you. We'll take it from here." "No, you won't." He blinked. "I'm with Mr. Cole's office." "That's supposed to impress me?" Gray suit adjusted his cuffs. "We need to move him. There's a board session starting in less than 40 minutes. Monica stared at him, then at Ethan, then back at the man. She had spent years in healthcare, and nothing chilled her faster than people who sounded more worried about paperwork than pulse. "He is not going anywhere until EMS gets here," she said. "Ambulance response will take too long," Camel Coat replied. "We have a driver." Annie pressed herself tighter against Monica's side. Monica's voice turned colder. "He collapsed on a sidewalk. He is short of breath, altered, and still unstable. So unless one of you became a doctor on the drive over, you can back up and let me do my job." Gray suit's eyes hardened. "Do you know who he is?" Monica did not even blink. "Yes. That's one of the reasons I don't trust either of you." For the first time, Ethan seemed to truly hear the conversation around him. His head shifted. He looked at the men by the curb, and something passed across his face that Annie could not name, but Monica recognized immediately. Not relief. Wariness. That interested her. "Ethan," Gray suit said, stepping forward despite her warning. "We need a decision. The room is waiting." Monica held out a hand, stopping him. Another step and I call the police too. Nobody moved. The whole block seemed to pause with them, the hum of the porch light, the rattle of dry leaves along the sidewalk, the distant bus kneeling to release passengers at the corner. Then, at last, from somewhere far off but coming closer, came the thin rising cry of a siren. Not close enough yet, but close. Annie let out a breath. That's them. Monica squeezed her shoulder once. Yes, baby. Ethan looked at Annie then, his eyes still tired, still heavy, but steadier than before. He watched the little girl who had kept him awake, and the woman standing between him and two men in expensive coats. For the first time in years, perhaps the first time since he had made himself too powerful to need ordinary mercy, he had nowhere to hide from the truth of who was protecting him. His voice was barely above a whisper. Don't let them move me. If this moment touched you, please take a second to like the video and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Your support helps this channel grow and share more powerful stories. And if you believe stories about justice and humanity matter, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more. Monica's expression changed again. Subtly this time. The distrust remained. So did the anger. But now something else joined it. Attention. All right, she said quietly. Then nobody moves you. The siren grew louder. At the curb, the two men from Ethan's office exchanged a glance that said more than their careful manners had. Not concern, not loyalty, calculation. Monica saw it, and she filed it away. Because when a powerful man collapses on a poor woman's front walk, the first people who show up tell you a great deal about the life he has built. The ambulance arrived in a wash of red light and noise that made Annie's heart jump into her throat. The siren cut off, but its echo seemed to cling to the block for a few long seconds. Two paramedics stepped out fast, one carrying a monitor bag, the other pulling a compact stretcher from the back. Their boots hit the sidewalk with the kind of purpose Monica recognized instantly. No wasted motion. No wasted words. Who called it in? One of them asked. I did, Monica said, already moving aside just enough to give them access without fully stepping away from Ethan. Monica Hayes, I'm an RN. Male, 40-ish, collapsed after exertion. Tachycardic, clammy, altered, periods of near syncope. No visible trauma. The younger paramedic gave her a quick nod of respect. How long was he down? Maybe 8 to 10 minutes since my daughter found him. He's been conscious on and off. Annie stood very still beside the porch rail, both hands wrapped around the chipped white wood. She watched the men kneel beside Ethan and start attaching leads, wrapping a blood pressure cuff around his arm, clipping a pulse oximeter to his finger. The machine beeped to life, too loud in the night. Ethan blinked against the flashing lights and turned his head away slightly, as if even that small brightness hurt. Sir, can you tell me your full name? The older paramedic asked. There was a pause. Then, quietly, Ethan Cole. Both men glanced at each other, not dramatically. Just enough for Monica to see they recognized the name, too. Mr. Cole, the older one said, recovering quickly. I need you to stay still for me. Gray suit took a step forward from the curb. He needs Northwestern. We'll follow. Monica didn't even look at him. You'll do whatever the medical team allows. Camel Coat tried a different tone this time, softer and more polished. Miss Hayes, is it? We appreciate what you've done. Truly. But Mr. Cole has urgent responsibilities. The younger paramedic looked up sharply. Right now, his only urgent responsibility is not crashing on me. That shut the man up for the moment. Annie pressed closer to Monica's side. Mama, is he gonna die? Monica crouched slightly so she could answer without taking her eyes off the scene. Not if people do what they're supposed to do. Annie nodded, though fear still shone in her eyes. The blood pressure reading came up. The older paramedic frowned. Pressure's low. I know, Monica said. He looked at her again. You did good keeping him flat and elevating the legs. Monica tilted her head toward Annie. She did. For the first time, both paramedics looked directly at Annie. The younger one gave her a small smile. Then you did real good tonight. Annie didn't smile back. She just stared at Ethan while they worked on him, as though she had not fully accepted that adults could be trusted with him yet. A fresh call lit up Ethan's broken phone on the sidewalk. Gavin Mercer again. The screen glowed, dimmed, and glowed once more. Monica noticed Ethan noticing it. "You want that answered?" she asked quietly. His eyes drifted to her face. There was intelligence in them now, struggling through the fog of exhaustion. No, it wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Monica believed him. That unsettled her more than if he had begged for the call. The paramedics started an IV line with quick, competent hands. Ethan flinched only slightly. He looked like a man who had trained himself never to show weakness in front of witnesses, but witnesses had a way of multiplying anyway. Across the street, Miss Bernice finally opened her front door and stepped out in a robe and house shoes, one hand pressed against her chest. "Monica?" she called softly. "Everything all right, baby?" "No, ma'am," Monica called back. "But it's being handled." Miss Bernice squinted toward the walkway, then froze when she realized who was on the ground. Even from a distance, Monica saw recognition flash across her face. "Well," the older woman said after a moment. "Isn't that something?" Annie turned. "Miss Bernice." He fell down. "I can see that," the woman muttered. "Question is what he was doing over here in the first place." That made two of them. The younger paramedic helped Ethan sit up slightly to assess him again. He swayed, and Monica instinctively reached forward, steadying his shoulder before she could stop herself. His suit fabric was damp and cold under her hand. "Easy," she said. His gaze lifted to hers. For one strange second, the noise of the block seemed to blur around them. The ambulance lights, the office men by the curb, Annie's anxious breathing, Miss Bernice watching from across the street. There was only the look in his face. Not arrogance, not gratitude either. Not yet. Just the stunned vulnerability of a man unused to being seen at his weakest by people with no reason to protect his dignity. Monica straightened at once. The older paramedic asked, "Mr. Cole, do you know what day it is?" He exhaled slowly. "Tuesday. Do you know where you are?" A longer pause. His eyes moved to Annie's house, to the crooked porch light, the split trash bag. The chalky traces of a hopscotch grid faded near the steps. "South Side," he murmured. Monica folded her arms. "Better than some." Camel Coat stepped in again, trying for patience. "Which hospital are you transporting him to?" The older paramedic answered without looking up. "Closest appropriate ER, unless he states preference while fully alert. He'll want Northwestern." Ethan closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. "No." Now everyone looked at him. Gray Suit frowned. "Ethan." "No downtown," Ethan said, forcing the words through dryness and fatigue. "No press. No office." Monica caught that. So did the paramedics. The older one kept his tone neutral. "Do you have a different hospital preference, sir?" Ethan's focus slipped again. He was fading, but not completely. He looked at Monica, maybe because she was the only fixed point in the scene who did not want anything from him except honesty. "Somewhere," he said, quiet. Gray Suit's jaw hardened. "This is ridiculous." The younger paramedic stood up so fast his vest rustled. "You want ridiculous? Keep interfering with patient care and I'll have CPD move you back." That bought them another few feet of distance. Annie tugged lightly on Monica's coat. "Mama, will he remember me?" Monica looked down at her daughter, startled by the question. "Why would you ask that?" Annie shrugged, but her eyes stayed on Ethan. "Because he looks like people remember him. Not the other way around." Miss Bernice gave a low hum from across the street, the kind older women made when a child said something truer than expected. Monica brushed Annie's curls back from her forehead. "Maybe he will," she said. The paramedics began preparing Ethan for transport. They helped him onto the stretcher, strapping him in carefully when his knees almost buckled beneath him. Even through his exhaustion, humiliation crossed his face. Men like Ethan Cole were not meant to be seen carried. They were meant to stride into buildings while others held doors. Tonight, the doors belonged to an ambulance. As they lifted the stretcher, Ethan turned his head weakly toward Annie. She stepped forward before Monica could stop her. "Sir," she said, voice small but steady. "You did good staying awake." A faint line appeared at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. Something gentler than that. Something surprised. "Thanks." Annie, her eyes widened. "You know my name. You told me." Then the stretcher rolled toward the ambulance. Gray Suit and Camel Coat moved at once, angling toward the back doors, but Monica stepped into their path. "You heard him," she said. No office. Camel Coat's politeness cracked. You seem confused about your role here. Monica's chin lifted. No. I'm very clear on it. Gray suit gave her a long, cool look. This isn't over. Miss Bernice called from her porch, loud enough for the whole block to hear. Sounded threatening to me. That made the younger paramedic glance over with open irritation. Gentlemen, either follow in your own vehicle like normal people, or clear the loading space. For once, the suits had no fast answer. Monica watched the ambulance doors close. Red light washed over Annie's face, then faded as the vehicle pulled away from the curb and headed north. The block fell quiet again, too quiet. Annie leaned into Monica's side at last, all the bravery draining out of her at once. Monica wrapped an arm around her and held her close. On the sidewalk near the gate, Ethan's broken phone still lay where he had dropped it. Its screen lit one more time in the darkness. Gavin Mercer. Then it went black. By the time Monica and Annie stepped back inside the house, the warmth felt strange. It wasn't really warm. Not the way new houses in richer neighborhoods probably felt, with their sealed windows and perfect insulation. It was the ordinary warmth of a small home on a cold Chicago night, radiator heat ticking through old pipes, the oven still holding a little leftover warmth from dinner, the smell of dish soap and onions and fabric softener lingering in the air. But after the flashing ambulance lights and the hard voices at the curb, it felt almost unreal. Monica locked the front door, checked the deadbolt twice, then stood for a second with one hand still resting on the knob. Annie watched her mother's face carefully. Monica always looked tired after late shifts. Tonight she looked something else too, angry. Annie slipped off her sneakers and stood by the mat in her pink hoodie and socks. Mama? Monica turned. The anger in her face softened the moment she looked at her daughter. You did good tonight, she said. That should have made Annie feel proud. Instead, tears rushed into her eyes so suddenly they startled her. I thought he was going to die. Monica crossed the room in 2 steps and pulled her into a hug. Annie pressed her face into her mother's coat, which smelled like cold air, hospital sanitizer, and the coffee she never quite had time to finish. Monica's hand moved slowly over Annie's hair. I know, she said quietly. They stood there like that for a while, right in the narrow front hall beneath the family calendar and the church flyer pinned to the wall. Outside, the street had gone back to normal. A car rolled past. Someone shut a garage door down the block. The city had already begun swallowing the moment, but Annie could still see the man's face in her mind, pale, exhausted, and trying so hard not to close his eyes. He said my name, she whispered into Monica's coat. Monica leaned back enough to look at her. What? In the ambulance. He said thanks, Annie. He remembered it. Something unreadable crossed Monica's face. Then he was listening. Annie wiped her nose with the back of her hand. Is that good? Monica exhaled through her nose, the way she did when a question had too many answers. Maybe. She took off her coat, hung it over the chair by the kitchen table, and looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time tonight. The lamp by the couch was still on. Annie's crayons were spread across the coffee table. A bowl with 2 apples and 1 bruised banana sat in the middle of the kitchen table beside a stack of mail Monica had not opened yet. Everything was ordinary. That made what had happened feel even stranger. Annie climbed onto one of the kitchen chairs and hugged her knees up to her chest. Who was he? Monica went to the sink and washed her hands carefully, longer than she needed to. Hospital habit. Or maybe thinking habit. You don't need to worry about that tonight. But you knew him. Monica dried her hands on a dish towel. I knew his name. That man from TV? Monica glanced at her. Annie had noticed more than she let on. Children always did. Yes, Monica said at last. That man from TV. Annie frowned. He didn't look like TV. No, Monica said, folding the towel over the oven handle. Most people don't, up close. She filled a kettle and set it on the stove, more out of instinct than thirst. T meant the emergency part was over. T meant they were home. T meant she could delay saying out loud what was already taking shape in her mind. Ethan Cole. Even thinking the name irritated her. He was younger than she'd expected in person, not much older than 40. On television and in the papers, he always looked sharper, more polished, wrapped in that clean, expensive certainty men like him wore as naturally as skin. standing beside mayors and investors, smiling over ribbon cuttings, talking about innovation and renewal and growth. Words that sounded hopeful until you lived where the renewal landed. Monica opened the cabinet, took down 2 mugs, then changed her mind and reached for Annie's plastic cup instead. No caffeine for a 6-year-old at this hour. She poured water into a small saucepan for cocoa instead. Annie watched her mother's face. "Mama, what? Are those men bad?" Monica looked up sharply. "What men?" "The men in the coats, the ones who wanted him. Wanted him, not worried about him, not asking if he was all right. Not relieved he was breathing. Wanted him." Monica turned the burner on. "I don't know if they're bad," she said carefully, "but I know they weren't thinking about his health." Annie mulled that over. "You didn't like them?" "No." "Why?" Monica leaned one hip against the counter and crossed her arms. Explaining adult danger to a child was like handling hot glass. Too much truth could cut. Too little could leave her unprepared. "Sometimes," she said slowly, "grown-ups care more about what somebody can do for them than about what's happening to that person." Annie's brows pulled together. "That's mean." "Yes," Monica said. "It is." The kettle began to rattle softly. Monica turned back to the stove before Annie could ask the next question: why a rich man would have people around him who sounded mean, why important men still ended up alone on sidewalks, why the world kept making simple things complicated. Monica had her own questions. What exactly had Ethan Cole been doing on her block? Why had he been running alone? Why had those men seemed more alarmed about a board session than a collapse? And why this part bothered her most had Ethan himself told her not to let them move him. That wasn't the voice of a man surrounded by loyal people. Annie climbed down from the chair and padded over to the living room window. She parted the curtain with 2 fingers and peered out at the front walk. "His phone is still there," she said. Monica stilled. "What?" "On the sidewalk." She came quickly to the window and looked out. Annie was right. Near the gate, just inside the circle of weak yellow porch light, something dark and rectangular still lay beside the path. Ethan's phone. Monica closed her eyes for one brief second. Of course, in the rush of the ambulance, the men in coats, the monitor, the stretcher, no one had picked it up. Not the paramedics. Not the office vultures. Not even Monica. Annie looked up at her. "Should we get it?" Monica hesitated. Every practical instinct said yes. Don't leave an expensive device on the sidewalk overnight. Don't invite trouble. Don't let neighborhood teenagers spot it before dawn. Every other instinct said leave it exactly where it was, and let one of his polished people come back for it. Then she pictured those men again. No, she did not want them on her porch at midnight, knocking like they owned the air around the house. "I'll get it," Monica said. She slipped her coat back on but left it unbuttoned, opened the door, and stepped out onto the porch. The air had gotten colder. The block was nearly quiet now except for a television somewhere and the low hum of traffic from a larger street beyond the houses. Monica walked down the front path slowly, scanning the sidewalk first. Old habit, good sense. When she reached the gate, she bent and picked up the phone. The screen was cracked at one corner, but not dead. The lock screen glowed instantly in her hand, and there he was, Ethan Cole, photographed the way rich men always were for magazines and company websites. Clean jaw, expensive suit, steady eyes, that same careful confidence. Underneath the photo, missed calls crowded the screen in a stack. Gavin Mercer. Office. Board chair. Unknown. Gavin Mercer again. Then a text banner slid down before the screen dimmed. "Where are you?" "They're ready to vote." Monica stared at it. Vote? For what? She already knew the answer before she admitted it to herself. Inside the house, Annie called. "Mama?" Monica turned back toward the porch, the phone cold in her hand now despite the warmth left from his palm. The signs by the church lot, the branded folders, Cole Urban Strategies, the men in coats, the urgency, a meeting important enough for a billionaire to run himself into collapse trying to reach it. Monica looked down at the glowing screen one more time. Then she went back inside and locked the door. Annie stood in the hallway waiting for her. "Did you get it?" Monica held up the phone. Annie nodded, relieved. "Good. It looked lonely out there." That almost made Monica laugh, but not quite. She set the phone face down on the kitchen table as if it might stain the wood. The cocoa simmered softly on the stove. The house felt smaller now somehow, not because anything had changed inside it, but because something from outside had crossed the threshold and left a mark. Annie looked at the phone, then at her mother. "Mama?" "Yes. Is he gonna come back for it?" Monica looked at the cracked screen, at the silent names trapped inside it, at the life that had nearly spilled out on her front walk and the machine already trying to drag it elsewhere. "I don't know," she said, and for the first time that night, the truth of it settled in her bones. She had saved a man whose world had already been reaching for hers. Monica barely slept. She lay on her side in the dark with one arm draped over Annie, listening to the old house settle around them. Pipes clicked in the walls. A car passed once around midnight, then another much later, bass thumping faintly before fading into the city. Annie had fallen asleep quickly, the way children sometimes did after fear had wrung them out completely. But Monica's mind kept circling back to the cracked phone on the kitchen table. At 2:13 a.m., it lit up again. She saw the glow from the hallway and got out of bed before the second vibration. She stood in the kitchen barefoot in borrowed silence, staring at the screen. "Gavin Mercer. Call declined." Then a text. "We can contain this if you answer." Contain this. Monica let out a low breath through her nose. That was the language, wasn't it? Not concern. Not how is he. Not is he alive. Contain. As if Ethan Cole's collapse were a leak in a pipeline or a spill on a boardroom floor. She didn't open the message thread. She wasn't interested in becoming part of anybody's evidence chain. She turned the phone face down again and stood at the sink for a long moment, staring out into the dark front yard where the porch light still glowed over the gate. By morning, the neighborhood looked exactly the same. That was the strange thing about major events. The world rarely rearranged itself to honor them. Garbage trucks still came. School buses still hissed to the curb. Mr. Lewis still swept his front walk with military seriousness, wearing a brown cardigan over a t-shirt and house slippers despite the cold. Miss Bernice still opened her front curtains at 7 sharp and judged the whole block through lace. Monica was in the kitchen scrambling eggs when Annie shuffled in wearing polka-dot pajama bottoms and one sock half off. "Morning," Annie mumbled. "Morning, baby. Wash your face." Annie climbed onto the chair by the table instead and rested her chin in her hands. "Did he die?" Monica stopped moving for half a second, then went back to the skillet. "No." "How do you know?" "Because the hospital would have called back if he coded in the ambulance, and they needed information." Annie thought about that. "So he's okay?" Monica slid eggs onto a plate. "That's not the same thing." Annie accepted this in the solemn way children sometimes accepted truths they didn't fully understand. Her gaze drifted to the kitchen table. The phone was still there, face down, but it drew attention anyway, like an unwelcome guest. "Are you going to give it back?" "Yes." When I know who I'm giving it to." Annie reached for her fork. "Not the coatmen." "No," Monica said. "Not the coatmen." That seemed to satisfy her for the moment. Breakfast was simple eggs, toast, apple slices browned at the edges because Monica had cut them too early. Annie ate slower than usual, stealing glances toward the phone between bites. Monica packed her lunch with practiced hands. Turkey sandwich, pretzels in a plastic bag, one clementine, one oatmeal cookie left over from Sunday's church social. The ordinary rhythm helped. It always did. Outside, the air held that crisp gray chill that made Chicago seem older than other cities. Monica buttoned Annie's coat, adjusted her backpack, and walked her to the bus stop at the corner. The route took them past the vacant lot by the church, where 3 bright development signs stood in the dirt like flags planted after a war. Future site of the Harbor Point Corridor, a Cole Urban Strategies initiative. Annie slowed beside the sign. "That's his name?" Monica looked at it too. The glossy rendering showed clean sidewalks, luxury storefronts, trees too symmetrical to be real, and people who all looked like they had somewhere pleasant to be. No church, no corner store, no old folks sitting in folding chairs in summer, no kids with jump ropes, no people who looked like the families already living there. "Yes," Monica said. "That's his name." Annie frowned at the picture. "Where are our houses?" Monica's throat tightened. "That's a good question." The bus came before Annie could ask anything else. Monica kissed her forehead, watched her climb aboard, and stood on the curb until the bus pulled away. Then she turned back toward home with her jaw set. She had the day off, not by choice. The clinic had cut her hours again this month, explaining it with budget language so clean it almost deserved a lawyer. She should have been grateful for a morning to breathe, to do laundry, to catch up on bills. Instead, she had a billionaire's phone on her kitchen table and a growing suspicion that last night had dropped something ugly directly onto her front walk. At home, she made coffee strong enough to strip paint and sat down at the table. The phone looked expensive even face down. She tapped the screen awake without unlocking it. More messages had stacked overnight. Board moved meeting to noon. Press is asking questions. Call me now. If Monica Hayes is involved, we need to know. Monica went completely still. There it was. Her name. Her full name. In writing. Which meant either Ethan had told someone, or one of the office men had overheard it on the sidewalk and passed it along. Either way, she was no longer outside the circle. A hard knock sounded at the front door. Monica's body reacted before thought did. She stood, silenced the phone screen, and crossed the room quietly. She did not open the door right away. She looked through the curtain first. Miss Bernice stood on the porch in a purple coat and church hat, hands planted on generous hips. Monica opened the door with relief. "Morning, Miss Bernice." "Morning?" "Child, I've been up since 6 wondering whether the man on your sidewalk was the same man from Channel 7. Monica stepped aside. "Come in." Miss Bernice did, bringing with her the scent of cold air and powder and old-fashioned confidence. She took one look at Monica's face and headed straight for the kitchen without waiting to be invited. "You got coffee?" "Just made it." "Then, pour." Monica did. Miss Bernice wrapped both hands around the mug and settled into a chair like she had come to preside over a hearing. "Well?" she asked. Monica gave her the short version. Collapse. Ambulance. The office men. The phone. The messages. Miss Bernice listened without interrupting, which meant she understood the seriousness of it. When Monica finally repeated the text mentioning her by name, the older woman clicked her tongue. "That's not good." "No. You call the hospital?" "I'm not family. They won't tell me anything." "You call a lawyer?" Monica laughed once. "With what money?" Miss Bernice took a sip of coffee and squinted toward the development signs visible down the street through the front window. "That man's people been sniffing around this neighborhood for months. Surveys, offers, letters dressed up like opportunities." She shook her head. "Folks always say the same thing when they want your land. They act like they discovered value where you've been living your whole life." Monica leaned back in her chair. "I know." Miss Bernice studied her over the rim of the mug. "You feeling sorry for him?" Monica answered too fast. "No, that wasn't what I asked." Monica looked away. Out the window, Mr. Lewis was now arguing with his hedge trimmer like it had insulted the flag. He looked... Monica began, then stopped. "Weak?" Miss Bernice supplied. "Yes. That surprise you?" "A little," Monica thought. More than it should have. Men like Ethan Cole weren't supposed to look weak. They were supposed to glide from polished car to polished building to polished headline, while other people absorbed the damage beneath their ambition. Seeing him on the ground, breathing like a man who had outrun his own body, had unsettled something in her. Not because weakness excused anything, but because it made him human in a way power usually kept hidden. Miss Bernice set down her mug. "Human beings make trouble," she said. "That doesn't stop them from being human." Monica let that sit. The phone buzzed again. This time the screen flashed an incoming call from an unknown number. Monica and Miss Bernice both stared at it. "You gonna answer?" the older woman asked. Monica hesitated. Then she picked it up. "Hello?" A woman's voice answered immediately, crisp and controlled. "Miss Hayes?" Monica's spine straightened. "Who is this?" "This is Laura Bennett, executive assistant to Mr. Ethan Cole. I understand you may have possession of his phone. Not are you the woman who helped him. Not thank you for calling. Straight to property." Monica's voice cooled. "Mr. Cole's phone is safe." A pause. Then, slightly less polished, "Mr. Cole is asking for it." That caught Monica off guard. "Asking?" "Yes, ma'am. Specifically. He said not to send anyone from the office. He asked that I call you directly if possible." Miss Bernice lifted both brows over her coffee. Monica tightened her grip on the phone. "How is he?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Stable." Laura said at last. Exhaustion, dehydration, cardiac stress, but no infarction. He'll be discharged later today if he cooperates. If he cooperates, somewhere inside a hospital room, Ethan Cole was apparently difficult, even horizontal. Monica looked at the cracked phone in her hand, then at the signs outside, then back at Miss Bernice, who was already reading every emotion across her face like Sunday scripture. When does he want it? Monica asked. Today, Laura said. Personally, Monica's mouth flattened. Of course he did. Monica spent the next 10 minutes doing things she always did when she needed to think. She rinsed the breakfast plates. She wiped the counter twice, even though it was already clean. She folded the dish towel into smaller and smaller squares. None of it changed the fact that a billionaire she neither trusted nor liked had specifically asked to see her. Personally, Miss Bernice watched all this with the patient interest of a woman who had lived long enough to know that some silences were louder than arguments. Well, she said at last, you can't stand there ironing that poor towel with your hands all morning. Monica set the towel down. I know. You going? Monica looked at Ethan's phone where it lay on the table like an accusation. I said I'd bring it. That's not what I asked. No, it wasn't. Monica went to the window. The development sign by the church lot stood bright and clean in the weak morning light, as offensive as a grin. Beyond it, the block moved in its usual rhythms. Mrs. Alvarez from 2 houses down was loading grocery bags into the trunk of her aging Buick. Mr. Lewis had finished with his hedge and was now fussing with the small American flag near his porch steps. Across the street, the Carter boys were arguing over a basketball before school. Ordinary life, valuable life, the kind people like Ethan Cole described in terms like density and turnover and market opportunity. I'm not doing it for him, Monica said. Miss Bernice snorted. Baby, nobody asked you to embroider his initials on a handkerchief. You're returning a phone. Monica reached for her mug, found it empty, and set it back down harder than necessary. He asked for me, not his office. Me, and that bothers you. Yes. Why? Monica started to answer, and stopped. Because men like Ethan Cole did not ask women like Monica Hayes for anything directly, unless they wanted control, leverage, gratitude, silence, or all four. Because she had spent too much of her adult life being looked through by powerful people until they suddenly needed something and then discovering she was visible after all. Because last night, for one unsettling moment, she had seen genuine fear in his face, and that bothered her more than anger would have. Miss Bernice studied her. Take the phone. Keep your eyes open. Don't let anybody rush you, and don't you go in there forgetting who you are. Monica gave a dry laugh. I don't think that's likely. No, Miss Bernice said. It never is with you. That's one of your better qualities. By 11:30, Annie was at school. The dishes were done, and the house had become too small to pace in any longer. Monica changed out of her house sweater and jeans into dark slacks, a clean, cream-colored knit top, and her good brown coat, the one she wore to parent meetings and funerals and other occasions, where looking composed mattered more than feeling it. She left her hair down instead of pulling it back. She wasn't sure why. Perhaps because scrubs made her feel like she was arriving as staff. She was not staff. She slipped Ethan's phone into her handbag, wrote the hospital name and room number on a notepad by the fridge in case anything ran late, and called the school office to say Annie would go to aftercare if needed. Then she stood by the door for 1 second longer than necessary. Go on, Miss Bernice said from the table, stirring sweetener into a second cup of coffee she had somehow decided to stay for. He ain't the Lord. He can wait 5 minutes if traffic's bad. Monica smiled despite herself and left. The hospital was cleaner and colder than the one where she worked. Better funding, better floors, better art on the walls pretending that money could soften fluorescent light. In the lobby, the television over the seating area was muted, but the caption bar below a morning business segment made her slow half a step. Cole absent from major redevelopment vote. A glossy headshot of Ethan flashed on the screen, then a drone image of downtown towers and the church lot rendering Monica now hated on sight. The caption changed before she could read the rest. The receptionist directed her to a private cardiac observation floor that required an extra badge scan at the elevators. That told her enough about the kind of patient Ethan Cole was. Privacy did not merely protect people like him, it insulated them. On the 5th floor, everything was quiet in a controlled, expensive way. Carpet in the hall instead of linoleum. Abstract art that meant nothing. Fresh flowers on a side table. Even illness was handled with better manners here. A woman stood near the nurse's station in a navy sheath dress with a tablet tucked to her chest. Blonde, neat, efficient. She looked up the moment Monica approached. "Miss Hayes?" "Monica Hayes." The woman's posture eased by a fraction. "Laura Bennett, thank you for coming." She didn't offer a hand. Monica noticed that. Not rude, exactly. Just careful. Uncertain of the social script when gratitude and class unease had to share a hallway. Laura gestured toward a corner room. "He's alone." For the moment, a faint tightening around Laura's mouth. "Mr. Cole has had a difficult morning." Monica thought of the repeated calls, the texts, the contained panic in corporate language. "I imagine he has." Laura lowered her voice. "He refused to speak to the board until he had his phone. Then he refused to let legal send anyone to get it." That surprised Monica enough to show on her face. Laura noticed. "He can be very exact about certain things." "Is that the polished way of saying stubborn?" The woman almost smiled. "Yes." Monica let that sit between them. "Who were the men last night?" Laura's expression flattened instantly. "I'm not sure. Try again." Laura looked down the hall, then back at Monica. "Mr. Mercer's people, most likely. Gavin Mercer." "Yes." The name felt sharper out loud. "His second in command," Monica said. Laura gave a small nod. "Among other things." That phrase lodged somewhere in Monica's mind. She filed it away. At the room door, Laura stopped. "He's medically stable, tired, unhappy. Not always in that order." She hesitated. "He asked specifically that no one from the office be in the room when you arrived." Monica put a hand on the door handle. "Why?" Laura's polished expression slipped for the first time. "If I knew that, Miss Hayes, my life would be much easier." Inside, the room was larger than Monica's living room. That irritated her immediately. There was a private seating area by the window. A polished cabinet hiding the television. A tray with untouched broth and tea. A vase of lilies sending expensive perfume into the air. The blinds were half open, showing a gray strip of Chicago sky and the hard geometry of nearby buildings. Ethan sat upright in bed in a pale hospital gown under a dark cashmere blanket someone had clearly brought from home. Even tired, he looked like a man the room had been arranged around. His color was better than last night. His breathing was even, but exhaustion still clung to him, not just in the shadows under his eyes, but in the strange stillness of a person forced to stop moving against his will. He looked toward the door as she entered. For 1 second, neither of them spoke. Monica had seen him on concrete beneath a buzzing porch light, half conscious and helpless. Here he had walls, privacy, polished medical equipment, and every signal of status restored around him. Yet somehow he still looked more vulnerable now than he had on her front walk. Maybe because now he was awake enough to know exactly how exposed he'd been. "I have your phone," Monica said. Something almost like relief moved across his face. Not over the device itself, she thought. Over the fact that she had come. "Thank you," he said. His voice was rougher than she remembered, less controlled, realer. She walked to the chair nearest the bed and set the phone on the side table, but didn't hand it over immediately. His gaze dropped to it, then back to her. "You don't trust me," he said. Monica folded her arms. That would be an odd place to start. A flicker of something crossed his face. It might have been shame. It might have been humor, too tired to fully form. "No," he said quietly. "I suppose it would." From the hallway came the distant roll of a supply cart and the murmur of nurses changing shifts. Ordinary sounds, familiar sounds. They made the room feel slightly less staged. Monica studied him. Clean-shaven now. Hair brushed back. No sweat. No panic. No concrete under his shoulders. And yet the memory of his whisper on her walkway, "Don't let them move me," still sat between them like an open question. "You asked for me," she said. "Not your assistant. Not security. Me. Why?" Ethan looked at the phone again but made no move toward it. Then he lifted his eyes to hers and answered with a bluntness she had not expected. Because you were the only one there last night who didn't want something from me. For a moment, Monica said nothing. The room was so quiet she could hear the steady tick of a monitor somewhere behind Ethan's bed and the muted hiss of hospital air moving through the ceiling vents. Outside the half-open blinds, Chicago rose in cold gray lines, all glass and ambition. Inside, a billionaire sat in a private cardiac room looking at her as if the simplest truth had cost him something. Because you were the only one there last night who didn't want something from me. Monica let out a slow breath. That's a sad thing to say about your life. A faint, humorless smile touched his mouth. I didn't say it was a good life. She pulled the chair back and sat, though she kept her coat on. It was a small choice, but an important one. She wasn't staying. Ethan noticed. She could tell. He reached for the phone at last, picked it up, turned it over once in his hand, then set it back down on the blanket without unlocking it. That caught her off guard. Aren't you going to answer all those people losing their minds over you? She asked. In a minute. Monica raised a brow. Your assistant made it sound urgent. It is, but not urgent enough to send your own people away? His gaze moved to the window. They're not my people. There it was again, that strange crack in the polished version of him. Not weakness exactly. Recognition. The kind that came too late and yet still landed hard. Monica leaned back in the chair. Then who are they? Employees? Stakeholders? Opportunists? He rubbed a hand briefly over his face, then lowered it. Take your pick. You left out friends. That earned her a quick glance. I did. She watched him for a beat. He looked better than he had on her walkway, but not by much. There was still a heaviness in him, as if his body had not yet forgiven him for what he'd done to it. His hospital tray sat untouched. The tea had gone pale and cold. The broth skin had hardened at the edges. A man used to commanding rooms was currently losing a battle with lunch. Monica noticed things like that. So, she said, what exactly were you trying to outrun? He didn't answer right away. When he finally did, his voice was quieter. Time. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one. Monica folded her arms. You ran yourself into the ground trying to get to a meeting. Yes. A meeting your office seemed more worried about than whether you were breathing. A flicker passed over his face. That sounds like Gavin. Gavin Mercer. Yes. The one who kept calling. Ethan nodded once. Monica looked at the phone on the blanket between them. What does he want? He wants the board vote to go through. And what vote would that be? He knew exactly which one she meant. She saw it in the way his shoulders shifted, almost imperceptibly, as if some part of him wanted to brace. The Harbor Point redevelopment package, he said. Monica's jaw tightened. The one with your signs all over my neighborhood. Yes, the one that takes out the church lot, half the block behind it, and pushes 100 families to whatever zip code still has room for people nobody wants to see. His mouth flattened. That isn't how the proposal is written. No, Monica said sharply. It never is. Silence settled again. He didn't defend the language this time. Didn't start talking about revitalization or economic growth or opportunity corridors. Monica had expected those words the moment she walked in. Men like Ethan Cole wore them like cologne. Instead, he asked, how long have you lived there? The question irritated her on instinct. It sounded too close to interest, and too many important men used interest as camouflage. All my life, she said. My mother rented that house first. Then she bought it 15 years before she died. I finished high school there. I brought Annie home there. Her eyes stayed on his. I've paid taxes there while men in better shoes than mine stood at podiums and called the whole area underused. He lowered his gaze. From the hallway came a soft knock, then Laura Bennett stepped in just far enough to ask, Mr. Cole, the board has rescheduled for 1:30. Mr. Mercer is requesting. No, Ethan said. Laura didn't blink. Yes, sir. She withdrew, closing the door with careful quiet. Monica watched him. You say no a lot. I usually get listened to. That must be nice. This time he almost smiled for real, though it vanished quickly. Sometimes, Monica looked around the room again, the flowers, the private nurse call panel, the thick blanket that probably cost more than her monthly electric bill. You know what bothers me? He met her gaze. I'm guessing you're going to tell me. You get to collapse in a room like this. Her tone stayed even, but only because she was used to holding things level under pressure. You get private floors and executive assistants and people who say words like stable in gentle voices. Men in my neighborhood work themselves sick too. Women in my neighborhood work themselves sick. They just don't get lilies and carpet when it happens. Something in his expression changed, not defensive, not wounded, just struck cleanly where she had aimed. "You're right," he said. The answer was so immediate she almost distrusted it. "You say that easily?" "No," he said quietly. "I say it late." That line landed harder than she wanted it to. Monica glanced away, toward the lilies, toward the tray, toward anything that wasn't his face. "Annie wanted to know if you'd remember her." His eyes lifted at once. "I do. She'll be pleased. She saved me." Monica gave him a look. "She kept you awake. The paramedics and your fluids saved you. She did what nobody else did." He paused. "She treated me like I was worth helping before she knew who I was." Monica's chest tightened in a place she did not appreciate being touched. That's because she's 6. Maybe that's why. She studied him more carefully now. The room, the title, the money, they still sat around him like armor someone had hung back in place after a battle. But the man inside it no longer seemed entirely protected by it. "You really don't remember what happened before you fell?" she asked. "Bits of it," he said. "Car trouble, traffic, calls. I decided walking would be faster." A tired laugh escaped him, bitter and brief. "Turns out that was a bad calculation. Why not let someone reschedule?" He looked at her as if the question itself came from another country. "Because I built a life where I'm not supposed to need that." Monica shook her head. "That sounds exhausting." It was. She noticed the tense. Outside the room, a code cart rattled past. Somewhere down the hall, a nurse laughed softly at something another nurse said. Life went on, even inside hospitals. Monica had always respected that about them. They taught you quickly that nobody got to pause the world just because their private crisis felt enormous. She leaned forward slightly. "Tell me something honestly, Mr. Cole." "Ethan, I didn't offer that." A flash of that dry, almost smile again. "Fair." Monica held his gaze. "Did you know my neighborhood was in that package?" He could have lied. She knew that. Rich men lied every day without changing their pulse, but he didn't. "Yes," he said. "Did you know families still live in every house you marked?" His voice lowered. "In theory." Monica laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "In theory," he looked down at his hands. "That's not good enough." "I know." "No," she said. "It isn't." They sat in the truth of that for a moment. Then Ethan picked up the phone again, thumb resting over the cracked edge of the screen. "I need to stop that vote." Monica blinked. "Excuse me?" He looked at her fully now, and for the first time since she stepped into the room, she saw something steadier than exhaustion. Decision. "I need to stop it," he repeated. "And if Gavin's this desperate, it means he thinks he can push it through without me." Monica's skepticism rose on instinct. "So now you're the hero?" His answer came fast. "No." The word hung there, plain and unsheltered. "No," he said again. "I'm the man who signed off on a machine and only just noticed who it was crushing." That, more than anything else he had said, made Monica sit back and go still, because it wasn't redemption. It wasn't even apology. Not yet. It was worse. It was accuracy. Monica did not answer right away. Accuracy was harder to argue with than charm. Harder than remorse, too. It sat in the room without asking to be liked. And for a man like Ethan Cole, that alone felt almost radical. She looked at him for a long moment, then stood. "That still doesn't make me trust you," she said. "It shouldn't." His answer came without offense, without performance, just tired acceptance. Monica picked up her handbag from the chair. "I need to get my daughter from school in a few hours. I have laundry at home, bills on the table, and a refrigerator making a noise that sounds expensive. So whatever revelation you're having in this room, don't mistake me for an audience." Ethan nodded once. "Fair enough." She turned to go, then stopped with her hand on the chair back. "One more thing." He looked up. "If you really mean what you said, then don't start with speeches. Don't start with press releases either." Her voice sharpened. "Start by understanding that people like me have heard every polished promise a city can invent. renewal, investment, opportunity. It all sounds lovely right up until the rent doubles and your neighbors disappear. His gaze did not leave hers. I know. Monica gave a small, humorless shake of her head. No. You know the words. That's not the same thing. She walked to the door before he could answer. But just before she opened it, she heard him say, quietly, "Then tell me." Monica turned back. He was still sitting upright in the white hospital bed, the expensive blanket over his legs, the cracked phone in his hand like a thing that had betrayed him by surviving. He looked less like a billionaire in that moment than a man who had finally discovered the cost of never having to ask honest questions. "Tell you what?" she asked. "What it looks like from your side." She studied him, trying to find the trick in it. Men with power often mistook confession for change. They wanted one hard truth, neatly delivered, so they could wear it like a medal and call themselves transformed. Monica had no interest in helping anyone decorate their conscience, but there was something in his face that stopped her from dismissing him outright. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the fact that he had not once tried to impress her. Maybe it was that Annie had kept him alive long enough for this conversation to happen. And Monica was beginning to understand that once a child drags a grown-up back from the edge, the adult owes the truth at minimum. So she stayed. She did not sit this time. She stood near the window, one hand in her coat pocket, and looked out at the skyline instead of at him. "You want to know what it looks like?" she said. "It looks like old women opening letters with shaking hands because official envelopes never bring good news to neighborhoods like mine. It looks like fixed incomes and rising taxes. It looks like people who've lived on one block for 40 years getting told the area is finally becoming valuable, like they've just been renting space inside somebody else's idea until now." She heard no movement behind her, so she kept going. "It looks like churches losing members because the families move farther out. It looks like kids changing schools mid-year because their bus route gets too long or their mother can't keep the apartment. It looks like corner stores closing, not because they failed, but because suddenly they don't fit the image on a brochure." She folded her arms, and it looks like people with polished shoes saying none of that is personal. When she finally turned, Ethan had gone very still. Monica continued, softer now, because some truths did not need volume to land. "My mother used to say a neighborhood is more than walls. It's who notices when your porch light doesn't come on. It's who brings a casserole when somebody dies. It's who knows your child's middle name. You can't replace that with better landscaping." A long silence followed. Then Ethan asked, "Your mother's still there?" "No." Monica's voice tightened before she could stop it. "She died 8 years ago. I'm sorry." She looked at him evenly. "That won't fix her roof either." He took that without protest. Monica checked the time on her watch. "I have to go." This time, when she turned, he did not stop her. But as she reached the door, he spoke again. "Monica." It was the first time he had used her first name. Not carelessly, carefully, as though he understood it had to be earned and knew he had not earned it yet. She looked back over her shoulder. "Thank you," he said. "Not for the phone. For coming." Monica opened the door. "Thank my daughter. She's the reason you were awake long enough to ask for help." Then she left. In the hallway, Laura Bennett was waiting with a tablet held close to her ribs. She rose from the chair outside the room the moment Monica stepped out. "Well?" Monica slipped her coat more tightly around herself. "He has his phone." Laura nodded. "Thank you. He also wants to stop the Harbor Point vote." For the first time, the assistant's professional mask cracked clean in two. Her eyes widened. "Not by much. Just enough." "I see," Laura said. "No, I don't think you do." Laura glanced toward the closed room door, then lowered her voice. "Miss Hayes, with respect, there are people around Mr. Cole who have tied a great deal of money to this vote. A great deal of reputation, too." Monica thought of the men on her walkway, one in gray, one in camel, both speaking about board sessions while Ethan struggled to stay conscious. "I guessed as much." Laura hesitated. "Then be careful." The warning was quiet, sincere, and deeply unwelcome. Monica's eyes narrowed. "Are you telling me I'm in danger?" "I'm telling you that when powerful people are embarrassed, they don't always behave elegantly." That sat heavily in the air between them. Monica gave a short nod and walked away. By the time she reached the ground floor, the hospital lobby had grown busier. Families clustered around vending machines and coffee kiosks. A volunteer in a red vest pushed a cart of newspapers. On the television overhead, Ethan's headshot appeared again beside the words, "Market uncertainty after coal absence." Below it rolled a smaller line. "City officials expect Harbor Point decision this afternoon." Monica stood beneath the television and watched his smiling photo beam down over the room. He did not look like the man from last night. He did not look like the man in the hospital bed either. That was the trouble with public faces. They stayed fixed while real people shifted underneath them. Outside, the wind had picked up. Monica tucked her chin into her coat collar and walked toward the bus stop. She could have driven, but parking downtown was robbery, and indignation did not lower rates. On the ride home, she stared out the window as the city changed block by block. Glass towers gave way to warehouses, warehouses to row houses to corner stores and fenced lots and laundry lines strung in back alleys. Chicago was never one city for long. It kept becoming another version of itself every few miles. When she got off near home, Miss Bernice was already on her porch like a sentry in orthopedic shoes. "Well?" the older woman called before Monica had even reached the gate. Monica let herself into the yard. "He's alive." Miss Bernice nodded. "I gathered that much from your face." "Alive how?" "Tired. Stubborn. Rich, in a hospital kind of way." That earned a sharp little laugh. "And?" Monica reached the porch steps and paused. "And he says he wants to stop the vote." Miss Bernice's expression changed slowly. "Says." "Yes." The older woman gave a grave nod. "That's the right word to be suspicious of." Inside the house, the afternoon light slanted across the living room carpet. Annie's crayons were still on the coffee table. One of her school worksheets lay folded beside them, a row of large penciled letters practicing the word home. Monica stood looking at that page for a long moment. Then her phone rang. "School," she answered at once. "Hello?" The secretary's voice was warm but apologetic. "Miss Hayes, Annie is fine, but she's a little distracted today. She told her teacher she saved a man's life last night, and now she's worried he'll forget to say goodbye." Monica closed her eyes briefly. Of course, children did not let stories go unfinished. "Thank you," Monica said. "I'll pick her up early." When she hung up, Miss Bernice was watching her from the kitchen doorway. "What now?" Monica picked up Annie's worksheet and ran her thumb over the penciled word. "Now," she said, "I have to explain to my daughter why a man can survive because of her, and still belong to the world trying to take her home away." Monica picked Annie up just after 2:30. The school office smelled faintly of pencil shavings, copier toner, and the tired sweetness of children who had been indoors too long. Annie sat in a plastic chair outside the principal's office with her backpack at her feet and a folded drawing in her lap. The moment she saw Monica, she stood up so quickly the chair legs scraped the floor. "Mama." Monica crouched and opened her arms. Annie came into them fast, all warmth and worry and 6-year-old seriousness. Monica kissed the side of her head. "You okay?" Annie nodded against her shoulder. "I wasn't in trouble." "I know." Her teacher, Miss Parker, came out of the office with the kind expression of someone who had already heard the whole story twice. "She really is fine," she said. "Just preoccupied." "That makes two of us," Monica replied. Miss Parker smiled politely, then lowered her voice. She was very upset at the idea that helping someone might not mean they stay in your life. Monica glanced down at Annie, who was now pretending not to listen while listening to every word. "Thank you," Monica said. "I'll talk to her." Outside, the afternoon had turned colder. The wind coming off the lake had sharpened into something meaner, sliding through coat seams and under collars. Monica took Annie's hand as they walked toward the bus stop, then changed her mind and steered them toward the small diner 2 blocks from school instead. "Can we go home?" Annie asked. "In a minute. I think we both need something warm first." The diner was narrow and old, with fogged front windows, cracked vinyl booths, and a bell over the door that rang like an afterthought. It smelled of grilled onions, coffee, and fryer oil that had seen better decades. A waitress in white sneakers and tired eyeliner nodded them toward a booth near the back. Annie climbed in and immediately put her folded drawing on the table like evidence. Monica slid into the seat across from her. "You want grilled cheese or soup?" "Both?" Monica gave her a look. "Soup," Annie said. They ordered tomato soup for Annie, coffee for Monica, and a side of toast they didn't need but would eat anyway. When the waitress left, Annie unfolded the paper. It was a drawing of the front walk. The porch light glowed yellow in a thick wax crayon circle. The gate leaned slightly to one side because Annie always drew things the way she felt them, not the way they measured out. There was a small figure in pink kneeling beside a much larger one in dark blue. Above them, in shaky first-grade letters, she had written, "Don't sleep, sir." Monica felt something tighten in her chest. "You drew this at school?" Annie nodded. Monica traced a finger just above the paper without touching it. "You remembered all that?" "I didn't forget it." No, Monica thought. That was the problem. Children forgot, scraped knees, and bad spelling tests. Not nights like that. The waitress brought coffee, then soup, then toast. Steam rose between them for a moment, giving Monica an excuse to gather her thoughts. Annie dipped her spoon carefully. "Mama?" "Yes." "Is he bad?" Monica looked up. Not mean, not rich, not sick. Bad. There it was, the question hidden under all the others. Monica wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. "I think he's done bad things." Annie considered that. Like stealing? Not exactly. Then what? Monica chose her words the way she chose steps on ice. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt people even if they never see the hurt up close. Annie frowned. "That's still bad." "Yes," Monica said quietly. "It is." Annie stirred her soup with great seriousness. "But he said thank you." "He did. And he remembered my name." "Yes. Bad people don't say thank you." Monica almost corrected her. Plenty of bad people said thank you. Plenty of dangerous people had good manners. But Annie was 6, and 6 required truth in pieces, not all at once. "Sometimes people are more than one thing," Monica said instead. "Sometimes they've done wrong and still need help. Sometimes they need to decide whether they're going to keep doing wrong after that." Annie looked down at the drawing. Did he decide? Monica thought of Ethan in the hospital room, pale against white sheets, saying with startling plainness that he had signed off on a machine and only just noticed who it was crushing. "I don't know yet," she said. That was the hardest answer to give a child, that justice was not immediate, not tidy, not delivered on schedule by adults with polished shoes and official language. It took time, and even then, it often arrived limping. Annie dipped the toast into her soup and ate quietly for a minute. Then she said, "If he's one of the people trying to take our house, why did you help him?" Monica held her daughter's gaze. Because that was the question beneath all the rest. Because children noticed what adults hoped to hide. Because Annie had watched her mother kneel beside a stranger and choose care over bitterness. And now she wanted to know why that choice mattered. "Because you were right to help him," Monica said at last. "And because I need you to grow up knowing that someone being wrong doesn't mean we stop being right." Annie blinked at her. Monica went on, more softly now. "What kind of person would I be if I taught you to leave somebody on the ground just because I don't like what they've done?" Annie thought about that for a long while. The diner hummed around them, silverware clinking, coffee refilling, an old man at the counter complaining gently to no one about city parking. The radio behind the register played a country song from 30 years ago, low enough to be memory more than music. Finally, Annie said, "But helping him doesn't mean he gets to take our house." "No," Monica said firmly. "It does not." That answer seemed to steady her. Annie took another spoonful of soup. "Are we going to see him again?" Monica looked out the window at the street, where people passed bundled in coats, heads down against the cold, every one of them carrying some private problem through the afternoon. "I don't know," she said. But even as she said it, she knew that wasn't true anymore. Ethan Cole had not simply fallen at her gate and vanished into a hospital room. His phone had brought the world after him. His assistant had warned her. His signs stood in the dirt by the church. Whatever happened next, the line between his world and hers had already been crossed. When they got home, Miss Bernice was waiting on the porch with a grocery sack in one hand and news in her face. "I brought sweet potatoes," she announced. Then, lowering her voice as Annie passed into the house, "And Channel 7 says the board session got delayed again." Monica took the bag. "Again?" Miss Bernice nodded. Something about Mr. Cole wanting revisions. That sent a ripple through Monica she did not welcome. Inside, Annie set her backpack down and went straight to the coffee table where her worksheet still lay folded. She opened it and added something to the drawing with a red crayon. Monica stood in the doorway watching her. "What are you doing?" "Fixing it." Annie held up the picture. Now, beside the yellow porch light and the blue-suited man on the ground, she had drawn another figure taller than the first one, in dark curls and a long coat. "Mama," and above the three of them she had written, in wobbling letters that leaned into one another, "Home is where people help you." Miss Bernice saw it over Monica's shoulder and let out a soft sound that was almost a sigh. Monica swallowed hard, because there it was again. The thing adults kept trying to out-talk and outspend and outplan. The simple moral clarity of a child. Not property, not investment, not opportunity zone. Home. Her phone rang before she could answer Annie. Unknown number. Monica stared at it, then answered. "Yes." Laura Bennett's voice came through, lower and tighter than before. "Miss Hayes, I'm sorry to call again. Mr. Cole is being discharged. He insists on seeing the neighborhood before the revised vote. Today." Monica turned slowly toward the window, where the development signs were visible down the street, like a threat in daylight. "And why?" she asked carefully. "Would that involve me?" A pause. Then Laura said, "Because he says if he comes alone, people will think he's scouting property. If he comes with security, they'll think he's declaring war." Another pause. "He said you're the only person who might tell him the truth before he does something stupid." Monica closed her eyes briefly. In the living room, Annie had started coloring the porch light brighter. Monica did not answer Laura right away. She stood in the middle of the living room with the phone to her ear, staring past her own reflection in the front window toward the bright development signs near the church lot. Outside, late afternoon had begun folding into that flat gray Chicago light that made everything look colder than it was. Inside, Annie sat cross-legged on the carpet, adding careful yellow strokes to the porch light in her drawing as if brightness itself were something you could fix with enough patience. "Miss Hayes," Laura said. Monica exhaled slowly. "You're asking a lot." "I know." "No," Monica said. "I don't think you do." There was a brief silence on the line, and Monica could almost hear the assistant deciding how honest she was allowed to be. "Mr. Head, Cole is not in a position to hear comfortable lies today," Laura said at last. "That may be the only useful thing I can tell you." Monica looked over at Annie, who was humming softly to herself while she colored. "What time?" Monica asked. 1 hour. Monica closed her eyes for a beat. "That's not much notice." "No," Laura said. "It never is with him." Monica almost laughed, but there was no humor in her. "Tell him I'm not his guide. I'll tell him." She ended the call and stood still with the phone in her hand. Miss Bernice, who had been peeling sweet potatoes at the kitchen sink with the concentration of a woman who trusted knives more than most people, glanced over her shoulder. "Well?" Monica set her own phone on the table. "He wants to come here." Miss Bernice stopped peeling. Here. Yes." That man Dunn finally lost what little sense he had left. Annie looked up. "Who's coming here?" Monica hesitated. With children, timing mattered. So did tone. Annie could smell fear in an adult the way dogs smelled storms. "Mr. Cole may come by the neighborhood," Monica said carefully. Annie's eyes widened. "The man from the sidewalk?" "Yes. The man I saved?" Miss Bernice muttered under her breath. "And there's the trouble already." Annie climbed to her feet. "Why?" Monica reached for the right answer and found there wasn't one small enough for a 6-year-old. "Because he needs to see something." "Our house?" "More than that." Annie thought for a second. "Can I show him my drawing?" Miss Bernice made a soft noise that was part sigh, part prayer. Monica rubbed her forehead. "We'll see." By the time Ethan arrived, the block knew something was different. That was the nature of neighborhoods like Monica's. News didn't travel in straight lines. It traveled through curtains, porches, group texts, and people taking out trash at exactly the right moment. A black town car did not need to stop in front of her house for anyone to notice, it rolling slowly past the church lot first. Then the beauty shop, then the corner where Mr. 2P2, Lewis liked to stand and judge city planning from personal experience. When the car finally pulled up by Monica's curb, no one pretended not to watch. Miss Bernice remained on the porch in her purple coat, arms folded like a committee chair waiting for testimony. "Mr." Lewis stood one house down with a rake he no longer appeared to be using. Two teenagers on bikes slowed to half speed near the corner. Across the street, Mrs. Alvarez moved a potted plant that absolutely did not need moving. Monica stood at the gate with her hands in her coat pockets. Ethan got out of the back seat alone. That surprised her. No security team, no assistants, no polished men in camel coats. Just Ethan, in a dark overcoat over charcoal slacks and a sweater, looking healthier than he had in the hospital but not by much. He moved carefully, like his body had not yet forgiven him for what he'd done to it. The color had returned to his face, but there was still something thinner around the eyes, some deep weariness that expensive grooming could not fully cover. He looked at the house first, then at Monica, then, inevitably, at the sign down the block. "You came," he said. Monica did not move. "You're the one who asked." His mouth flattened, accepting the point. "Fair." The town car drove away, leaving him there with nowhere to hide behind glass. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The whole block seemed to be listening. Then Monica said, "You wanted to see the neighborhood. See it." Ethan looked past her, not in the quick scanning way of a developer assessing frontage and decay and potential. Monica knew that look. This wasn't that. This was slower, more uncertain. He took in the front porches with their metal railings and potted mums gone dry from the cold. The cracked sidewalks patched more often by residents than by the city. The folding chairs stacked beside one garage for summer block parties that everyone pretended were impromptu, though they never were. The church lot at the far end. The old barber pole that no longer spun but was too beloved to remove. The basketball hoop nailed above a garage door with no net left on it. Annie opened the front door before Monica could stop her. "Mama, is he here?" She saw Ethan and froze for exactly half a second. Then her whole face lit up. "You remembered not to die." Miss Bernice let out a sharp cough that might have been laughter in disguise. Ethan stared at Annie, and something in his expression shifted all at once, some private hardness softening under the sheer impossibility of a child greeting him that way. "I did," he said. His voice came out rougher than Monica expected. "Thanks to you." Annie stepped onto the porch, her drawing clutched in one hand. "I told you to stay awake. You did, and you listened. I'm starting to..." Monica gave him a narrow look. "Let's not get carried away." He nodded, and to her mild surprise, obeyed the correction without resistance. Annie held up the drawing. "I fixed it." Ethan took the page carefully, like it was something more fragile than paper. Monica watched his face as he looked at it. The yellow porch light, the crooked gate, the small figure in pink, the larger one on the ground. Monica herself added in dark brown and blue, and the words across the top in uneven letters. "Home is where people help you." He read them twice. Then he looked up at Annie. "That's a good definition." "She spelled people right all by herself," Monica said before she could stop herself. Annie grinned. "And I made the light brighter." I noticed. For a moment, the block went oddly still around them. No boardrooms, no signs, no money. Just a child offering a drawing to a man who had nearly vanished in front of her house. Then Mr. Lewis spoke from his yard without bothering to lower his voice. "You the reason they're trying to bulldoze the church lot?" Monica closed her eyes briefly. So much for easing into it. Ethan turned toward the older man. "Yes." The honesty of it landed harder than a denial would have. "Mr. Lewis planted his rake against the curb and came one step closer. "Then I'd like to know what kind of fool buys his way into a neighborhood and still doesn't know what it's for." Monica looked at Ethan, expecting polish, deflection, a statement shaped by years of training. What she got was quiet. "I'm beginning to understand I didn't know enough," he said. Mr. Lewis gave a dismissive grunt. "That's rich man language for too late." Miss Bernice took over from the porch. "Child, don't let him soften it with regret. We buried people from that church, fed people out that church, taught children in that basement. Ain't a corridor in the world worth more than that." Ethan turned toward her too. "I'm not here to argue." "No," Miss Bernice said. "You're here to learn whether you've got the decency not to ruin what you were too busy to notice." Annie looked between the adults, the way children do when the truth in a room is bigger than the words being used. She reached for Monica's hand. Monica gave it to her automatically. Ethan looked at the hand clasp, then at the houses again, then at the sign in the distance. "Walk me through it," he said quietly. Monica frowned. "Through what?" "All of it. There was no performance in him now. No microphone voice, no polished posture for donors and cameras, just a man standing on a South Side sidewalk under neighborhood scrutiny asking to be shown the damage he had only ever reviewed in packets. Monica should have refused. She knew that. She knew that men with power often survived by borrowing the moral authority of the people they harmed. She knew a walking tour could become anecdote, anecdote could become talking point, and talking point could become absolution if you were not careful. But she also knew the vote had not happened yet, and she knew, with a certainty she did not enjoy, that if Ethan was going to stop it, he needed more than outrage. He needed witness. She looked at Annie. Go inside with Miss Bernice for 10 minutes. I want to come. No. Annie's mouth turned down. But I can help. Monica crouched and brushed a thumb over her daughter's cheek. You already did. Annie considered protesting, then looked at Ethan, then at her drawing in his hand. Don't get tired again, she told him sternly. A real smile touched his face, then small, tired, and startled into existence. I'll do my best. Miss Bernice held out her hand from the porch. Come on, baby. Let these grown folks sort out whether they've got any sense. Annie handed Ethan the drawing and went reluctantly inside. The front door shut behind her. The block grew quiet once more. Monica straightened and looked at Ethan. You want the truth before you do something stupid? She said. Yes. She nodded toward the church lot. Then start walking. Ethan followed Monica down the block at a pace that made his pride work harder than his legs. He tried not to show it. But she noticed. Of course she noticed. Monica Hayes noticed the things people with money assumed. The rest of the world missed. The slight shortening of breath after half a block. The stiffness in his shoulders. The careful way he kept his face composed whenever the ache in his body flared. He was strong enough to stand in a tailored coat and look expensive in the cold. He was not yet strong enough to forget the hospital. Good, she thought. Let him feel where his limits are. They passed the church first. A red brick building with white trim gone weather-soft at the edges, and a hand-painted sign near the front steps announcing a food pantry every Thursday. The church lot next door sat bare except for weeds, winter-browned grass, and the polished development signs Ethan's company had planted like flags of ownership. He stopped there. Up close, the rendering looked even more insulting. Young trees in impossible bloom, clean sidewalks untouched by ice, happy people holding shopping bags no one on this block could afford. The name at the top gleamed in bold letters. Harbor Point Corridor, a Cole Urban Strategies initiative. Ethan stared at his own company's logo for a long moment. Monica folded her arms. You've seen the version in boardrooms. Now here's the neighborhood edition. He looked from the sign to the church. What was supposed to happen to this lot? Monica gave him a flat look. You tell me. He exhaled through his nose. Mixed-use retail, public plaza, parking structure on the back end. The church was supposed to receive transition support. Transition support, Monica repeated. That's a nice phrase. It means relocation funds, legal assistance, temporary use arrangements. It means goodbye with paperwork. Ethan didn't argue. A gust of wind rattled the signposts. Somewhere behind the church, a dog barked once and then settled. The city smelled like cold metal, distant fryer oil, and leaves breaking down under damp concrete. Monica nodded toward the side entrance of the church. My mother's funeral was held there. Annie's baby dedication too. Miss Bernice ran the kitchen downstairs for 15 years. Mr. Lewis still fixes the handrail every spring because he says the trustees buy cheap screws. She looked at the lot again. That public plaza of yours? It lands on memories first. Ethan's gaze moved to the church windows. I didn't know. No, Monica said. You didn't. They walked on. At the corner, the small grocery sat wedged between a barber shop and a laundromat with one broken neon letter. Inside the grocery, canned goods rose in narrow aisles under fluorescent lights that made everything look tired. A hand-lettered sign in the window advertised money orders, cold soda, and phone cards. The owner, Mr. Rahman, was stacking oranges near the register when Monica opened the door. The bell overhead rang. He looked up and smiled at her automatically. Monica, your coffee creamer came in this morning. Then he saw Ethan. The smile disappeared. What's this? Monica didn't soften it. He wanted to see the neighborhood. Mr. Raman looked Ethan up and down with the calm hostility of a man who had survived long enough to recognize polite danger. He should have come before the letters. Ethan glanced at Monica. Letters? She leaned against a display of canned soup, acquisition notices, interest surveys, purchase inquiries, little invitations to imagine moving before the city imagines it for us. Mr. Raman snorted. They offered me a sum that wouldn't cover half a lease in a better corridor. He looked directly at Ethan. I built this store when my son was 5. He's a dentist now. You know what your people put in the report? Aging retail footprint. The shame on Ethan's face this time was immediate and unguarded. I'm sorry, he said. Mr. Raman shook his head. Sorry doesn't keep the lights on. No one spoke for a moment after that. Then Ethan asked quietly, who sent the letters? Mr. Raman laughed once. Your company. Your law firms. Your consultants. Take your pick. Ethan absorbed that in silence. They left the store and moved farther down the block, past a narrow beauty shop with family photos taped to the mirror edges, past a duplex with a wheelchair ramp built from weathered plywood, past a house with plastic reindeer still tangled in a hedge because winter had come too fast for the owner's arthritis. Everywhere they went, people saw them. A man hosing salt off his front steps paused mid-motion. 2 teenage girls carrying school bags went silent as Ethan passed. A grandmother in a knit cap narrowed her eyes from behind a screen door and then called to Monica. You make sure he listening. Monica answered without turning. That's the plan. Ethan noticed everything now, though not always in the right order. Monica could see him learning to look past surfaces. The patched roofs, the hand-built planters, the ways people had repaired what money and city neglect left behind. She wondered if he understood yet that poverty and care could live in the same place. That wear was not the same thing as worthlessness. At last they reached the playground behind the elementary school, closed for the afternoon but still visible through the chain-link fence. The swings moved slightly in the wind, though no one was on them. Monica stopped there. Annie learned to pump her legs on those swings last spring, she said. She thought if she went high enough she could see downtown. Ethan followed her gaze to the skyline far off beyond the rooftops. She can, he said. On clear days. He was quiet for a moment. Did she know who I was? When she found you? No. And now? She knows enough. Does she hate me? Monica turned toward him then, surprised by the nakedness of the question. You think children work like that? His mouth tightened. I don't know how children work. That much is obvious. He accepted that too. Monica rested one gloved hand on the fence. Annie doesn't think in categories like investor, developer, donor, voter. She thinks in simpler things. Were you hurt? Did somebody help? Did you say thank you? Are you going to do better now? Her eyes held his. Children are merciful in ways adults don't deserve. He looked down. Monica went on, quieter. That doesn't mean they're wrong. The wind rose again. Somewhere a train groaned over tracks. Ethan slipped a hand into his coat pocket and took out Annie's drawing. The paper had already softened at the fold lines from being opened too many times. He looked at it now beneath the gray sky. The yellow porch light bright against crayon darkness. Home is where people help you. He read softly. Monica's throat tightened in spite of herself. She believes that. Do you? She didn't answer immediately. At 22, maybe she would have. At 32, with debt and grief and overtime shifts and a child to raise and a city always inventing new ways to package old cruelty, belief had become more practical than pure. I believe home is where people are known, she said at last. Help is part of that. So is memory. So is being able to stay long enough to matter. Ethan folded the drawing carefully and put it back in his pocket as if it belonged there. Then he said, I need the full property file, the resident impact estimates, all of it. Monica frowned. For what? He looked back toward the church signs. When he answered, his voice had changed. The weariness was still there, but something steelier had moved under it. Because Gavin thinks this is just about a delayed vote. It isn't. His eyes met hers. Not anymore. There was no swagger in him when he said it. No polished confidence, just decision sharpened by witness. Monica studied him, trying to decide whether what she saw was conscience or merely a better strategic posture. Maybe he didn't know yet either. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. Laura Bennett. Monica answered. Yes? Laura's voice was tight. Miss Hayes, I'm sorry. He needs to come back now. The board moved the session again. 6 o'clock. Mr. Mercer is already gathering proxies. Monica looked at Ethan. He had heard enough from her side of the call to understand. The sky was darkening. Porch lights were beginning to flicker on up and down the block. For one brief second, with the cold settling in and Annie's drawing in his pocket and her neighborhood still all around him, Ethan looked like a man standing at the exact edge of the life he had built and the life he had nearly bulldozed. Monica ended the call. Well? She asked. Ethan's gaze went once more to the church, the store, the schoolyard fence, the houses stitched together by memory and need. Then he said, Take me back. By the time Ethan's car pulled back up to the corporate tower, the city was already lighting itself for evening. Downtown glass held the last gray of the sky in long, cold reflections. Office windows glowed one by one. Traffic thickened below. The world of schedules and votes and polished urgency had resumed without apology, as it always did. Monica stayed in the passenger seat until the car stopped beneath the covered entrance. Ethan turned toward her. You don't have to come in. No, Monica said. I don't. But neither of them reached for the door. The driver kept his eyes ahead, professionally absent. Monica looked through the windshield at the revolving doors, the brass, the men in dark coats stepping in and out with phones to their ears. The whole expensive machinery of a city that mistook power for order. Then she looked back at Ethan. He had been quiet all the way from the neighborhood, not avoiding her, thinking. Once or twice she had seen his thumb brush the folded edge of Annie's drawing in his coat pocket, as if he needed proof of what he had just seen. You understand, she said, that if you go in there and turn this into a softer version of the same thing, you'll be worse than before. His face did not change. I know. No, you don't. Worse means now you've seen the people under the plan. Now you've seen Annie's school, Mr. Rahman's store, the church. If you still choose money after that, it won't be ignorance. He held her gaze. No, it won't. That answer satisfied her only because it wasn't defensive. Monica reached for the door handle, then stopped. One more thing. He waited. If they come after my neighborhood because you embarrassed them tonight, I won't protect your conscience from what that means. Ethan nodded once. They won't. That was a dangerous sentence from a powerful man. But it didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a promise he intended to make expensive. Monica stepped out of the car and shut the door. She did not go inside. She stood on the sidewalk beneath the tower lights and watched Ethan cross the polished entrance alone. He moved carefully still, though with more strength than yesterday. The doorman opened the glass door for him. Startled into extra respect by the sight of a man everyone had apparently spent the day discussing in his absence. Ethan did not pause. He disappeared into the tower, and the revolving door turned once, twice, then settled. Monica let out a breath. She could go home now. She should go home now. Instead, she stayed. Not long. Just long enough to know whether the world would shift by an inch or go right on crushing people in better tailoring. Inside, 23 floors above the street, the boardroom was all glass and curated calm. The city stretched beyond it in glittering lines. The table was walnut. Water glasses waited at every seat. Screens glowed with graphs and property maps. Men and women in suits sat in postures designed to look relaxed, while their eyes remained sharp with calculation. Gavin Mercer stood near the head of the table, one hand resting on a leather folder, his voice low as he finished speaking to the board chair. He was handsome in the sterile way ambition often was controlled, polished, forgettable until he smiled. When Ethan entered, that smile vanished. The whole room shifted, not dramatically, not openly, just enough. Conversations cut off. A legal pad closed. A woman from investor relations lowered her pen. Someone near the windows actually stood up in surprise, before remembering himself and sitting back down. Gavin recovered first. Ethan, he said, too smooth by half. You should be resting. Ethan shut the boardroom door behind him. The sound landed with satisfying weight. Apparently I rest badly. A couple of uneasy chuckles moved through the room and died at once. Gavin's expression did not. We delayed as long as possible. I know. We have proxy support. The city is ready. If this slips again, the press will make a meal of uncertainty. Ethan walked to the table slowly, the room watching every step. He did not sit. He placed both hands on the back of an empty chair and looked at the property maps glowing across the nearest screen. Colored blocks, projected gains, parcel outlines, not a single grief visible anywhere. Then he straightened. Harbor Point is off the table. Silence hit so hard it seemed to ring. Gavin blinked once, no more. That isn't practical. It isn't happening. The board chair cleared his throat. Ethan, perhaps we should discuss revisions. No, Ethan's voice stayed calm. That made it more powerful, not less. Not revisions, suspension. Full audit of resident impact, acquisition practices, consultant pressure, and proxy handling tied to this vote. Someone at the far end of the table muttered, Jesus. Gavin's polish tightened into something more dangerous. You are overreacting after a medical episode. Ethan turned his head and looked at him fully. No, I'm reacting late after a moral one. No one moved. For the first time since Monica had met him, Ethan sounded like a man who had stopped speaking for advantage and started speaking because not two would finish him in a different way. Gavin gave a thin smile. This company was not built on sentiment. Ethan's answer came without heat. No, that's becoming clear. He picked up the remote from the table and clicked the screen forward. The rendering of Harbor Point vanished. In its place appeared scanned copies of acquisition letters, consultant summaries, internal messages, and projected displacement estimates that had not been included in the public deck. Several faces changed color. We were given legal cover, one board member said sharply. You were given selective information, Ethan corrected. Gavin stepped forward. This is reckless. Ethan didn't look away from the screen. Letters went out undervaluing occupied properties. Relocation assumptions were based on vacancy fantasies. Community partners were listed who were never consulted. Church land usage was represented as transitional. School route impacts were omitted. His voice lowered. And my collapse was used as a window to rush approval. That landed exactly where he intended. Eyes shifted. One board member looked at Gavin, another at legal. The chair's mouth tightened. Gavin's calm finally cracked. You signed the original package. Yes, Ethan said. The honesty of it stopped the room cold again. Yes, he repeated. I did. That's on me. Which is why I'm stopping it now. A woman near the center of the table frowned. Stopping it exposes us. Ethan looked at her. Continuing it exposes who we are. No one had a quick answer for that. Outside on the sidewalk, Monica's phone buzzed in her hand. A text from Laura Bennett. He did it. Monica stared at the words for a second before looking back up at the tower. The revolving doors turned again. Journalists were beginning to gather near the curb now, drawn by rumor the way crows found shine. Someone in a long coat spoke urgently into a phone. Somewhere above, a public relations team was probably dying in tasteful silence. Her phone buzzed again. Second text. Board suspended vote. Internal review announced. Monica let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It wasn't victory. She was too old, and too black, and too familiar with institutions to call anything victory before the paperwork survived daylight. But it was something. It was time. Sometimes that was the first form justice took. The revolving doors opened hard enough to draw her eye. Ethan came out alone. The wind caught his coat as he stepped onto the sidewalk. He looked exhausted again, but differently now. Less hollow. More spent in the way truth spent people. He saw her immediately, and a brief surprise crossed his face as if part of him had not expected her to still be there. Monica folded her arms. Well? He stopped a few feet in front of her. The city moved around them in headlights and cold air and distant horns. It's suspended, he said. Full review. Gavin's authority is frozen pending investigation. Legals contained for the moment. For the moment, Monica repeated. Yes. She studied him. And what did it cost you? A tired half-smile touched his mouth. Probably quite a lot. Good. That earned the first real laugh she had heard from him. Not big, not polished. Just brief and human and nearly disbelieving. Then his face sobered. I meant what I said, he told her. This doesn't end with tonight. Monica looked past him toward the river of traffic, the city still glittering as if none of this mattered at all. "No," she said quietly. "It doesn't." He reached into his coat pocket then and took out Annie's drawing, folded and careful at the edges. He looked at it once, before offering it back. Monica didn't take it. "Keep it," she said. He glanced up. "She'll draw another one." Something in his expression changed at that, softening under the streetlights. A little distance away, a camera crew began unloading equipment. Monica noticed first. "You've got about 30 seconds before this turns into theater." Ethan turned, saw them, and exhaled sharply. "Then I should probably leave." "Yes." He hesitated. "Will Annie? She'll want to know if you did what you said." His eyes met hers. "Tell her I'm trying." Monica nodded once. "That, she understands." He stepped back toward the waiting car, then stopped one last time. "Monica." She waited. "Home is where people help you," he said, glancing down at the folded drawing in his hand. "I think I'm only beginning to understand what else it is." Monica looked at the tower behind him, at the cameras closing in, at the city that never stopped making and unmaking people according to who got counted. Then she said, "Home is also where people remember what you did next." He took that in like a man accepting terms. Then he got into the car, and the door shut behind him. Monica stood on the sidewalk and watched the car pull away into the Chicago night. Not fixed, not redeemed, not finished, but changed. And somewhere on the south side, under a crooked porch light beside a gate where a man had almost vanished, a little girl was waiting to hear whether the grown-ups had done any better with the second chance she had given them. This story reminds us that real change often begins with a simple act of kindness. A little girl who chose compassion over fear forced a powerful man to confront the human cost of his decisions. It teaches us that power, money, and success mean very little if they are built on the suffering of others. True strength is not measured by how much control we have, but by our willingness to listen, to admit when we are wrong, and to choose justice even when it is difficult. In the end, the story shows that one small voice, especially the voice of innocence, can awaken a conscience and remind us that a true home is not defined by property or wealth, but by people who care for one another. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.